Hello and welcome to video 3, session 3 for this 45-minute lesson. And what we're doing here is we're talking about the things that might happen on your part 3 test or standards check or a real lesson, and we're giving you all the different scenarios, or as many as we can, to make sure this works for you. Okay, so we're now 20 minutes into the lesson. At the end of the last video, I just done 3 roundabouts with Harry, and I'm guiding him through the gap finding. So I've been saying to him on the approach, look early to the right. Can you see where the white car's going? Can you see the signal? Can you see the position of the wheels? Look at the position of the vehicle coming off the roundabout. Look at that bus coming round. We need to stop, we need to go, and just giving him full talk through, but only on the gap finding. The mirror signal positions, speed, including the gear, was done by Harry because that's what he wanted to do. So now we're at the stage where I feel that Harry's handling gap finding quite well, but only because I'm giving him guided help. So now I need to transfer some responsibility over to Harry by shifting the level of instruction. Now, we did touch on the last video about how to do this. I feel that Harry's handled the guided instruction from me really well. So I'm going to keep the car moving, and whenever possible, try to keep the car moving unless you feel like from Harry's rapport or his body language that he needs to pull up and have a chat. Other than that, you can keep the car moving. So now my main goal for Harry is to give him more responsibility. So it would work something like this. Okay, Harry, now what I want you to do, you to take some responsibility. So I'm just going to ask you questions on the gap finding. You're still going to be doing your mirror signal position speed on the approach, but I want to ask you questions rather than tell you what to do. It's important now that you watch Harry's body language. If you're happy as a driving instructor that he can cope with that, encourage him to take that responsibility. And so you do. That's what you do. In the next roundabout, I am actually going to be asking rather than telling. On the second video, the one before this one, we also looked at sorting out goals outside the original goal. That's right. And on the first video, we also looked at a risk statement that suited Harry the pupil, and made sure that he understood that risk statement and what responsibilities he had. That's exactly it. So now I know that we're basically having 50-50 job share responsibility, and I'm going to have to answer David's questions on the move, on the way up to the roundabout. But let's just say we're going left again at the roundabout. So I'm going to be checking my interior left mirror, signaling to the left on my own. It's just going to be silent while I'm doing that. Positioning my vehicle, choosing my gear, but on the approach he's going to be asking me about the gaps, because that's what I wanted before the wheels start to move. That was my goal. That was what I was concerned about. That was my feel. I was feeling quite anxious about it. Less anxious now because I've had 3 goes at it, but David was giving me full guided instruction. Okay, so just to clarify the difference between guided and prompted or Q&A, or let's just go back to the guided. So on the guided one, I'd be saying to Harry, there's a white car there on the roundabout. Can you see the white car? Look at the wheels, look at where they're going. So now it's Q&A. But now let's look at the cars coming from the right as we approach this roundabout now. So can you see the white car? And Harry says, yes, I can. What signal has it got on? Oh, it's got a left signal. Where is the vehicle positioned? Oh, it looks like it's coming away from the roundabout. Where do you think that vehicle's going? Oh, it's going into our road. Okay. Do you think it's safe to go? Yes, I do. Okay, then let's go. Okay. So it's what, when, why, how. Responsibility is shifting over to Harry now, because he's having to answer those questions. Be careful you don't ask too many questions. It depends on the pupil and how they can cope with it. But just judge it, look at the body language. That sort of example I gave you is quite a lot of questions, but they might not need all those questions. They might only need a couple. It may be that you just want to say to them, talk to me about what's happening on the roundabout. A big open question like that. And then see if Harry comes out with something. He might just go through the whole thing like this. He might say, oh, I can see the white car signalling to the left. It looks like it's coming away from the roundabout. Oh, yes, I'm going to go. So you may not want to break down that many questions. It depends on the pupil. I can't say whether it will work or not. You need to look at the rapport and the body language of the pupil, and then you'll know. Okay, so questions like that, yeah. So other questions might be, can you see the bus? What signal has he got on? Imagine he's got a right signal on. Where's he positioning? Oh, he's hugging the roundabout. Do you think he's going to come towards us? Yes, I do. Are you going to stop? Yes, I am. Okay, then come to a stop. Now we're waiting, first car at the roundabout. Where do you think a gap is? Oh, it's coming up now. Are you going to go? Yes, I am. I'm going to go. Okay. Right, so choose your questions. Look at the body language. Make sure you don't overload the pupil, because that would be bad as well. And then all of a sudden, don't forget the word picture at the beginning on session 1, the video 1. The word picture was that he wanted to feel more confident finding gaps at roundabouts, because he felt he was a bit hesitant sometimes, and sometimes he would go. So now we're really digging into that and making sure that we're shifting the responsibility over to Harry. I'm answering the questions that David is asking me, but as he asked me one of the questions, I'm quite close to the roundabout and I'm looking to the right, and I stare to the right a little bit too long. I lose my positioning when I'm going up to the roundabout, and I happen to nearly clip the left curb because I'm concentrating on where the cars are going. Maybe David's asked me a couple of too many questions, and it's just, made me a little bit unsure. I've nearly clipped the curb, and David has had to take physical action to pull me away from the left curb before I turn left at the roundabout first exit. So now we have another learning opportunity, a fault, if you want to call it a fault, but a learning opportunity that's occurred. And that also needs to be written down if you have a list. Again, don't stare at it, don't even look at it, just put a little note down, scribble it down so you remember. So if you can remember from the second video, we've now got a few things building up now. We've got outside the goal, we've got moving away, didn't check his blind spot, remember that from the last video. Emerging from the junction and only looking right. And don't forget, those two things we did sort out by adapting the practice area so that we did a few more junctions to make sure that I was looking both ways and understood the risks. If you're not sure, watch the last video and you'll see. So we were managing the faults outside the goal. Okay, but now there's a little fault that's occurred. Well, not a little fault, it's quite a big fault. I could have mounted the pavement if David wasn't there, and now that needs to be addressed as well. So it's probably time now to pull up and have a pit stop. That's it. And just going on to a slightly different subject as well, don't forget when you're doing these lessons as well that you will be talking about Harry's general day as well. Make sure it's not too official sounding. There will be times on the lesson where you want to have a little chat about Harry's general day or his hobbies or whatever. It's really important. It's part of a lesson, as you will probably know. So just to bear that in mind as well. So anyway, going back to what we were talking about, I've had to take some physical action because he nearly hit the curb. So again, we're in, Harry's a little bit, oh boy, sorry about that. And so at that particular time when we're turning left off the roundabout, Harry wants to ask me a question. Oh, what happened there? I would say, don't worry, flag it. We'll come back to it in a minute. That is not an opportune time to talk about that, because Harry needs to concentrate, first of all, coming off the roundabout and doing his MSM routine as he pulls away, as he accelerates away, to make sure it's safe. So you just say, we'll flag that and we'll talk about it in a minute. Okay. So then you should have on your route 4 pit stop areas that you could use. That's part of your route planning. You need places to pull up in case that needs to happen. So, was sufficient feedback given to the pupil to help with any safety critical incidents. This is a safety critical incident. I've had to take physical action. So I find one of my pit stops that I've allocated on this particular route, and I pull Harry up on the left hand side. Okay, might not be straight away, but it should be within the next in 2 minutes or so. So I would say to Harry, I want you to pull up on the left in a safe, convenient place. Just along here would be fine. Okay, so Harry checks his mirrors, he signals, there's a car behind us, so it's a good job he did, and he starts to position his vehicle very close to the curb. Just as he pulls up on the left, actually he's not that close to the curb and there's a bit of a gap. And then I would say, how do you feel about your positioning where you've parked here? How close are you to the curb, do you think? And Harry will look at it and maybe say, well, I don't think I'm that close to the curb. Okay. And again, don't give him the answers. How are you going to judge how close you are to the curb? And he might say, do you know what, I've forgotten. So you tell him. Or he might say, oh yeah, it's my reference. Oh yeah, I can see you on my reference point. I'm not that close. So what are you going to leave it like this? Imagine that I'm not here. So clarify learning outcomes. And a learning outcome might be the fact that, you know, you're not going to be there forever. He might have a friend he wants to go and have a cup of tea with in his house. So you'd say to Harry, you're just going to leave the car like this? Or do you think you need to move the car closer to the curb? Oh, I definitely need to move it close to the curb. So I might say to him, well, just imagine I'm not here anymore. I want you to adjust your parking position so you feel like it's a safe place to park, that you would leave the car here and go and have a cup of tea with your friend. So it's another hook, rather than me say, oh, just get closer to the curb. That's very test-based, isn't it? You don't really want to do that. You want to think of ways to make them think. You know, leaving the car there and going to have a cup of tea with your friend is a good way of doing it. So Harry gets a little bit closer and probably job done. I don't need to go into great detail about that. He knows his reference points. So now he's close to the curb. Exactly. So that was really important that David sort of gave me that little hook, that little learning outcome for when I've passed my test. And yeah, I don't really want to leave my car sort of with my wheels halfway out on the road. It's important that I'm close to the curb. Now we're going to go through what has happened from the beginning of the lesson to where we are at this point. And I would say we're probably about 25 to 30 minutes into the lesson now. I know the way David deals with lessons, and I know that he would first of all say, right, scale me first of all on your goal, which is finding gaps at roundabouts. Where are you scaling yourself at this point? Because I know at the beginning you scaled yourself a 5 or a 6. Where are you now with the scale? So what that does is it makes me think and express my feelings and values about how I'm feeling about my main goal. And it keeps me focused on it as well, because if you can say what do you think went well first, but sometimes even if you say that, some pupils will just go for the negative anyway, especially if I've just nearly hit the curb. Now, on that point, if the pupil does go for the negative, don't really feel like anything's gone well really, because I've just nearly hit the curb and you had to move the steering wheel, deal with that first. So you could say as a driving instructor, okay, as you brought that up, let's deal with that first. Let's deal with the negative bit first. And then you would deal with the fact that you've had to grab the wheel going around the corner on that roundabout. On that score, when David had to grab the wheel and you're on your part 3 test and you've got the examiner sat in the back, it's very easy to feel like things aren't going well, because that's the goal is finding gaps at roundabouts, but this other things happen where you stare to the right and you've had to grab the wheel. So it doesn't feel very nice. It doesn't necessarily mean things are going badly just because you grab the wheel. It's just another learning opportunity. The important thing is that you deal with it and you talk about it and you coach the pupil, make sure that the ideas come from the pupil rather than coming from the instructor. Okay, so anyway, coming back to the fact that we've scaled it, and then David has said, where would you scale yourself now? And I say, probably about a 6 still, probably about a 6. Okay, exactly. So, and then as a driving instructor, it's quite normal to think, especially on a part 3 or standards check, oh my God, the scale hasn't gone up. They scaled themselves at the 6 at the beginning, it's still a 6, or even it's gone lower, a 5 or whatever. And it may be because Harry's hit the curb and he feels like his confidence has dipped slightly. But that's okay. You know, you controlled the risk by grabbing the wheel. So we'll find out why he's not gone up or down with the scale in a minute. So then you would say to Harry, so why are you still at a 6? What's happening? And he does say to me, well, I thought I got it, but you had to grab the wheel on that last roundabout, and you know, that made me feel a bit rubbish. So I think I'm still at a 6. I still can't seem to do these roundabouts. But then you would say to him, okay, that. We'll deal with that in a minute, but let's look at the positive side. Was that to do with finding gaps? And then Harry goes, no, probably not. So let's just talk about the actual goal that you had, finding gaps. Where would you scale yourself on that part? And he says, well, I think I found the gaps on the last 2 when you were asking me questions. So probably about a 7 or an 8. Great. Okay, so why has the scale gone up? Well, just because I think I'm finding gaps better, and I'm looking at the signals more and the position of the vehicles, and I don't think I was doing that before. I think I was just looking at the you know, I'm not even sure what I was looking at, but you mentioned the speed as well. I think I'm looking at how fast they're coming off the roundabout, so I think that's really helping me. So there we go. So all of a sudden you've got some information from Harry about how he's feeling and why he's giving himself a 6, but he's not actually giving a 6 on the goal. He's given himself a 6 because he's nearly hit the curb, which is more to do with his positioning. So it's another goal which will have to be adapted in this lesson. Okay, so then you say to Harry, okay, I get that. Let's just so it's really good that you feel like you're finding the gaps. So when we set off in a minute, how do you feel about taking full responsibility for the gap finding? We'll deal with the positioning in a minute, but how do you feel about taking full responsibility for the gap finding? And I'll just stay silent when it comes down to the gap finding. And Harry goes, oh, well, I'll give it a go. Yeah, that's fine. Brilliant. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. You're taking full responsibility, but I will remind you of that as we approach the roundabouts. Okay, so now I know I've got to take this full responsibility for the gap finding, but I've still got this issue with hitting the curb. So now David will come back to me and talk to me about that. Exactly. So I might say to Harry, what do you feel could be better? And he's probably going to say, well, my positioning as I'm going left, I just nearly hit the curb. So rather than me say to him, yes, you did because you weren't looking to the left, which is probably what happened, I would ask him, why do you think you nearly hit the curb? And I had to take action, and you would have hit the curb. Why do you think that happened? Probably he would say, am I staring too much to the right? And you would say, yeah, you are. You're staring too much to the right. So how are you going to do things differently next time so that you don't stare so much to the right? And Harry says, well, look more to the left as well. Yeah, look at your reference point in the corner of your window there where my badges are, and make sure that you're looking at the curb. So you do want to look to the right, but don't stare. Flick your eyes between the two. Yeah, so that's what you need to do. That would stop you from hitting the curb. So you're great with your observations now, and you're going to take that full responsibility for those observations. But the curb bit, it's just a case of flicking your eyes back and making sure that you're looking both ways, because you've got to look where you're going. And then you might say, do you think that relates to what happened earlier in the lesson? And he says, what do you mean? And you say, well, when you came out of the junction earlier, turning left, you looked to the right, but you didn't actually look to the left before you came out the junction. And we sorted that out, didn't we? So do you think those two things are linked? Oh yeah, they probably are, yeah. So what do you need to do to make that better? Well, look more to the left as well. Okay, and how much support and assistance do you need from me to make that work for you? Well, you know, I think I might need you to remind me to look left coming up to the roundabouts as well, so I'm not hitting the curb. Fine, I'll remind you. So we'll share that responsibility with the positioning and making sure you're looking to the left as you come up to the roundabout. But as far as finding the gaps are concerned, I want you to have a go at that yourself. Something to remember is your notes, your rough scribbly notes you've got down here. They're starting to build up. So, or let's talk about video 2, the last video that we did. So we did have the moving away problem. We had the not looking left when emerging. And now we have this new problem where Harry's nearly hit the curb because he's staring to the right. Okay. And you need to remember the levels of instruction that you're at that point. And that's where your little scribbly notes might help you. Before we pull away though, just another risk statement might be quite good as well. So just to confirm, so we're getting the structure right. So I'm just going to be David again now for a second. So before we pull away now, you're taking responsibility for the finding gaps now. That's down to you. That was your original goal. I'm going to give you 50-50 help with your positioning as you're coming up to the roundabout. Pulling away is down to you. Remember, moving off safely, what happened earlier. Junctions as well, when you're turning left, all right. For effective observations are down to you. Okay, that's where we are with everything. That's right, and that's a sort of risk statement that I would give. So I would make sure that we understand what responsibilities, whether it's guided, prompted, independent on each individual bit, including what happened earlier on in the lesson with the moving away and the turning left and right, and now the positioning and clipping the curb, or nearly clipping the curb. So now it's important that I do just mention again, tell me what pedals I've got down by my feet in the clutch and a brake. Okay, so don't forget, if there's any high risk situations where I feel like you're not dealing with something and the risk is getting high, I can step in and help you. So again, I know we're halfway through the lesson. I know I've said this already, but you're completely safe, Harry, at all times. So feel free to experiment like you were doing before. So we're off again and we're going to drive down the road, and now I need to adapt the route. Okay, so we're approaching the first roundabout now. So we just need to remember those levels of instruction that we need to give, and remind Harry as well. Don't forget, Harry, I want you to take full responsibility for the gap finding. I'm going to give you a little bit of a help with the positioning, and I'm going to ask you some questions. So that's what you do. So I'm staying silent here, and you give him positive body language, thumbs up. He can see it in the corner of his eye. Quick nod of the head. Simple terms like good, well done. Then with the positioning, you say to Harry, now look to the left, look down at your curb. Where do you want your curb to be? Are you in a good position here? Because he wanted 50-50 job share. Then he looks to the right and he says, yeah, I'm going to go. Okay, are you okay with your positioning? Yes. And now he's looking down to the left. You're adapting the lesson. You're giving him the level of instruction he wanted, and then he hasn't hit the curb. So now you're moving and you're still doing roundabouts. Okay, yes, so David is leaving me to it when it comes down to the gap finding. He's given me a bit of Q&A to make sure I'm looking down the left curb on the approach to the roundabout, because that's what I wanted. And then we go off and we do some more roundabouts, plenty of left turns at roundabouts. And it seems like I'm getting more and more confident now with looking down to the left. So the idea of this session 3, video 3, is make sure that you, the driving instructor, you are remembering the faults outside the goal, moving away, checking the blind spot, emerging. This happened quite early on in the lesson, but you need to remember it. And the levels of instruction initially with the gap finding, that's another thing you need to make sure you're doing. And where you are now with the gap finding. So Harry is now kind of independent with that. He's doing it himself. So learning is taking place and you're giving value for money because he's getting more and more independent with it. But this new thing's cropped up with the turning left, but you've dealt with it. And then he's getting better at that as well. Now he's not going to get perfect at everything because these new things are cropping up. So, you know, you're fixing one thing and another thing's happening. But that's a driving lesson. So Harry's me. I'm not going to get everything perfect. I've got to deal with this thing where I'm looking to the right or roundabout. So all of a sudden I'm forgetting to look left. So another thing's cropping up. But as a driving instructor, you're dealing with it. So when you do your Part 3 or standards check test, it's not about getting things perfect. It's about adapting the lesson. It's about controlling the lesson. It's about making it client-centered. It's about me. It's about Harry. It's about your body language with Harry. It's about making him feel relaxed. It's about pushing him as hard as you can, but not too hard. So you want to stretch your people, but not overstretch them. That's the end of this lesson. End of this video. And on the next video, we'll be going through to the final quarter of an hour of your driving lesson. We'll see you then.